Welcome, everybody, to another week of Wealth Wisdom, where we're helping you build wealth and legacy.
Companies are like an organism trying to survive.
It's always a risk when you're investing in a company that's purely tied to someone's brand.
45% of Americans have gone into debt for a Disney trip. All right, everybody, welcome back to another show of Wealth Wisdom. I'm your host, Justin Obi, with Eric Benz and Bill Ryan of Fox Hill Wealth Management. Today, we are getting into a common question a lot of people have asked us: when should I hire a financial advisor? If you're early in your career, there's a lot of reasons to do it. A lot of people kind of misunderstand this whole point, which is why we really want to dive in deep today in the show. Maybe I don't have enough money to warrant the need for a financial advisor. Maybe you do. We're going to break that down today in full. We're going to go into detail. I will be interviewing these guys and getting all the details for you as much as I can out of them. So are all financial advisors fiduciaries? Are they all the same, Bill? Are there different types?
No, there is within the financial advisory sphere, or
let's
overall,
find that.
Like looking at like you could be a life insurance agent, right? You're really primarily selling life insurance and annuity products, and put yourself out as a financial advisor. You could be solely a money manager and put yourself out there as a financial advisor. You could be, more on the tax end of things and put yourself out there as a financial advisor. There's so many different ways fees can be collected for service provided, whether it is a percentage of assets that they manage, whether it is commissions on products that they sell you. That also may have a trailing commission on those, whether it's, just strictly for time of service, right? You meet with someone, you pay them $350, they provide you with advice, based off of what they've done. It's all within the financial advisory sphere.
It's a really broad term then.
Oh, very extremely broad, and it's all over the place in terms of what they do. Someone they could charge you for the assets that they manage, but then also make a commission on a product that they sell you, right? So you may come to them and they may say, hey, I'll help you with your investments, but hey, you also need life insurance. I'm gonna sell you a product. Based off that, they'll get paid, things along those lines. I do think it's a very important thing is to break down how someone gets paid. And if they don't tell you exactly how they're getting paid, when they're getting paid, and why they're getting paid, I would be very hesitant. The term fee-only advisor has become kind of one of those very popular terms in today's world. And just because you're a fee-only advisor doesn't necessarily mean you're always doing what's best for the client. Okay, so there are insurance agents, right, who I would say that they're doing the best possible thing for you, right? They look over what's going on in your life, and they're providing the protection element that everyone needs in a financial plan. And they do the absolute best thing for you, right? There are other ones who are going to try to sell you the highest commission product, even if it fills a need, right, for something that you have. They're still trying to, push that commission product, right? So it might not be the best possible need for you, right? But it's the best way that they're going to get paid. There's so many things that go into it. You also, and another thing too, there's so many aspects of your finances. You want to make sure you have a really well-rounded financial advisor who understands your banking needs, right? Who understands your insurance needs, who has a very good understanding of investments to grow your wealth, right? And who understands what you need to have in case something happens to you or your spouse or your partner, who understands, your tax situation, right? How do we, how do we become as tax efficient as possible? Those things are stuff that a financial advisor should be doing for you. Ideally, you get the most well-rounded. And then, as well as there's also financial advisors too, who they might manage your investments, but they don't actually do any investing for you. They take your money, they put it in a third party, whether it be a mutual fund, an ETF, something along those lines. They may help with your asset allocation. They're not picking anything for you. Really anything for you. And then they're tacking a fee on top of that. And then there are other people who will actually create an investment portfolio for you. So they'll, more of a money manager in a sense. They will pick individual stocks that meet, your needs, individual bonds that are needed. So along the sphere of financial advisors, I mean, it is very vast out there, and it's tough to get a really good understanding. You know what I mean, from people, because again, the misconceptions are extremely broad. I would say, media, experts and things like that, authors and stuff who want to kind of steer you in the right direction, but then they're painting a picture of what everyone is. Some people say, oh, advisors are bad, right? But let's get into that a little bit more, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean just because you're an advisor, you may actually be a money manager, right? You may be picking the stocks. And the reason why they don't want them charging a fee, if it's like, oh, you pay a fee to the ETF, you pay a fee to the index fund, things like that. You're paying an asset under management fee. You are on those. And then those same people say, don't pay an asset under management fee. It's like, well, which is it? So if you have an advisor or a money manager who is going to be creating the portfolio for you, I would say that's fine to pay an asset under management fee in that case. You know what I mean? Because they're your actual money managers. It's not a fee on top of a fee.
So there's a lot. Yeah.
I just want to add something, and this is more like, these are kind of stories, because we're bringing in money all the time. We're, transferring in, getting new clients, and we see stuff that's like, it just speaks to like the importance of like finding someone you can trust.
Yeah.
Because like we've seen clients who are put in annuities that they're locked into, and they're younger, right? But like that annuity is only earning like, I don't know, 4% a year, and they're locked in there for like 10 years and missing, a bull market where it grows 50%. So you see like advisors that like put their clients in like inappropriate stuff. We've seen accounts come over where it's in a ton of cash. So they've missed a ton of growth, this client. And we're like, hey, and I'll call them up and be like, hey, did you talk with your old advisor? Do you have a very conservative risk tolerance? Like, why were you not invested at all? Turns out that advisor just wasn't doing anything. And that's why they came over in the first place. Like, just negligence.
Yeah, just not even
collecting
looking
an
at the account in a sense.
And then at an old firm I used to work at, we transferred over a client, and we had old statements, and this was like all they had. This was their life savings. Was what they were going to use to live on the next 30 years. And the advisor, I think, was a broker. It had to have been the case, because the account looked like it had been churned a bunch, and they were buying little like micro cap stocks that all did so terribly in a time period when the market was up dramatically. And this client missed out on all of that, to the point where we were thinking they should pursue like legal action against this prior advisor. But we see stuff like that all the time. So it's,
wow,
find someone you can trust. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was another thing too, right? That's how traditionally a lot of the old wirehouses and things like that's how they would make their money. They would make on a percentage of the trade. And again, I don't want to say, there are some advisors who, the reason why they did that, it was just how the business was run. But like some of them could say like, listen, no, my total fees on a client's account is so slim, right? Because I don't trade that often, right? So it made sense to almost be on the commission-based system. But there's a lot of leeway there for an advisor to come in and say, oh, I want to move money a little bit more, because guess what? That's going to add to my paycheck at the end of the week. So that, you know what I mean? They're all, in theory, right? They're almost incentivized to like trade more, whether it makes sense or not. Now you're going to get, hopefully, a lot of advisors who don't think that way, right? Or doing the best thing for the client. And then they can show like, look, this is why I'm doing it this way, because I'm actually saving the clients a lot of money versus an AUM model. So
what should people, ideally, what should people be looking for? We're getting way ahead of ourselves a little bit. I guess, maybe we unpack that a little later. There's so much information just listening to you guys. I'm trying to summarize it for the listeners. There's, you got to wade through a heap of, filters to find the right advisor, to make sure they're someone you can trust. They understand a full 360 degree, like what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish with your wealth. And make sure they're actively managing it, their fiduciary, etc. When should someone, I guess let's answer the question of the title of the show. Like, when should someone actually hire a financial advisor, assuming they find the right person? Uh, who wants you either?
Who wants it? Who wants?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
mean,
You go ahead
today,
first.
like, I don't know, do you enjoy like not having to worry about your finances? Do you like enjoy offloading? So,
Like, if you weren't an
style?
advisor yourself, when would you tell your son to find a financial advisor? Just for the say you didn't know. I mean,
Right.
if you were not in this space.
Probably right out of school, I would want him to find, shop around and find someone he can trust. I wrote down a few things. Yeah, having trouble staying organized, disagreement
Okay.
between partners about finances. Financial advisors help a lot there because they can increase transparency. Don't know what to invest in to hit certain goals. Saving for a house, retirement. Like, what do I invest in? How much do I need once I hit that stuff? How much can I take out in retirement? All those questions. If you don't know the answers to that, you 1,000% need an advisor. But I did just want to mention too, as far as like how to pick one, the reason, and you see it throughout the industry, we grow, 90% of our growth as a company is like referral based, because the most important thing is finding someone you can trust. And the way to find that is usually referral. That's how we grow. That's how most people grow in the industry. And if you're getting that referral, it means you're providing good service to your current clients. So
Yeah, helps weed out a lot of the bad actors, right?
yeah.
So what about, and I know, like, if you don't, how much money do you need to have, like, to start thinking about a financial advisor? Or can you just, I mean, I know that we provide financial plans one-off, right? And you don't have to have a minimum or anything like that. What would you guys say? Like, at what point, Bill, what do you think? Is there a certain number?
I mean, we don't have a minimum currently, you know what I mean? I will say this. I will talk to anyone. I'm not someone needs help. I'm going to try to help them, right? So I shouldn't say like we don't necessarily have a, quote unquote minimum, but you should be having someone. And also too, a lot of times if you get a referral, right, from another client, guess what? They're going to talk to you because they want to keep that current client happy. And they don't want to be like, oh, no, I wanted you to talk to Bill Ryan, and he just told me to go pound sand. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So a lot of times advisors will talk to you regardless. They might say, okay, at the end of that conversation, look, we're not a fit right now. You know what I mean? But like, here are a few tips I want you to go by in order to get started, right? Or maybe they give you someone who they oversee in their office. So they can do some guiding for you, but they're not necessarily, spending a ton of time. And some people say, oh, geez, maybe, he's too big for me. She's too big for me. You know what I mean? Things along those lines. So, that can be tough because a lot of people, I know, Justin, you've talked about this before, that a lot of people are kind of hesitant to reach out because they're a little self-conscious, right? I haven't saved enough. I haven't done enough. And, I'm not good enough. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So just as like Eric was saying, I would say one of the first things you do, whether you're a finance major or not, whether you're, you know what I mean, you have a financial background or not, I don't care who you are. You don't know what you don't know. Okay. And if you don't have experience, you could be a great, you know what I mean, getting a fabulous job right out of school in finance. There's still a lot about personal finance that you don't know.
Well, actually, that's a great point. A neighbor who's a trader, he's in the markets every single day. He was telling me he still has a financial advisor because it's a different goal set.
Yeah. And you could talk to another trader and they'd say, what do I need that for? But they just don't, they don't understand, necessarily the value that other, you know what I mean? That other person that Yeah. Because there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot that goes into it. A good financial advisor is going to take a look at your entire financial being. Okay. So they're going to look at how do you save money in taxes? And they're going to either understand the U.S. taxation system really well, or they're going to be closely aligned with your tax accountant. Okay. look at your insurance, okay, and make sure that you have the right policies in place, in order to make sure that the protection of your financial plan is in a really good place, right? To avoid financial catastrophe, right? So whether that's making sure that your spouse and kids are taken care of, but yeah, anything right along those lines, you want to make sure we're protected. You want to make sure that, again, going back, your estate is in good hands. And again, along your life, aspects of those plans become more important, right? 22-year-old might not necessarily need the life insurance policy in the estate plan, or that might not be as much focus, right? They're more in, how do I accumulate? How do I grow? You know what I mean? That's what their focus is right then.
Totally.
Which
But
you could argue that stage is more important, honestly.
what is that? Sorry, I didn't get that.
You could argue that stage is more important. Because you're not going to get those years back. So you need to start accumulating early.
100%.
We all know the guy who's never going to get a financial advisor. It's the same guy who's going to say like, oh, why would I hire a contractor? I can paint and, do the trim around the room myself. Like, what would be, watch some YouTube videos, and then you go to their house. You're like, oh, should have hired a contractor, So yeah, we all know that person.
Yeah. Oh, there are some you meet with them and you see little mistakes that they're making, but they still think that they're, you know what I mean? They're doing everything right. And you say, geez, yeah, you don't want to pay a fee, but you probably cost yourself, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands over the course of your life. They just don't see it because it's not really quite in front of them. So, but getting someone who understands all aspects of a financial plan. Do they understand banking? Do they, you know what I mean? Do they understand do they understand insurance? Do they understand tax? Do they understand estate? Do they understand? So even if they're not experts in those areas, but they can at least help guide you in those, that's very important to have someone who can do all those aspects. Do they understand investment management? Okay. Do they understand how the registration of those accounts, how will they affect you and what your goals are going to be, both in the short, medium, and long term? Okay. Because there's certain things that give tax advantages, but they may be detrimental to what you're trying to accomplish in the short term. A 22-year-old, they might be coming out and say, I'd love to buy a house. And then you have a financial advisor pushing them into all tax deferred investments. Some of them might not be the right, you know what I mean? Might not be the right thing for them. They might want to have some exposure to those, but if they want to buy a house by the age of 32 or something along those lines, it might not be best to be putting all their money in those tax advantage
like a
accounts.
Roth IRA.
Yeah, because you don't always have access, right, to the funds. So there's trade-offs, right? You maybe say to them, hey, listen, we're better off paying a little tax on this now because of the liquidity that we have access to these investments. And guess what? If you don't end up using it for a house, you can still use these funds for retirement down the line. You know what I mean? So it's there's certain trade-offs that you have to be doing, and that's kind of through the conversation that you have with your advisor, talking them through what the ideas that you have. They can kind of say, here's why you should go in that direction. Here's the things that you want to be thinking about on why that might not be the way to go. And those things just making sure the account registration is correct, making sure that can essentially be paying for the fees themselves. You know what I mean? Right there. And then if they help you with asset allocation and things like that, those also make a huge difference. And then coupled with the fact that, how they manage money, right? Their style of managing money. Some people only go by, they have certain styles and they don't deviate from it. That could be good for you. It might not be what you're looking for. Right. So those are all things that you want to be thinking about. And I think it's important. And if you're not in and involved with personal finance, there's so much stuff out there. It's probably worth paying. You know what I mean? Worth paying the fee to do it, because you don't know what you don't know. There's a lot of stuff out there on the internet. I know we have, the world at our fingertips. We also have a lot of terrible information at our fingertips.
Yeah.
Okay. On social media, things like that, I see incorrect stuff every day. There are now influencers who look at other influencers and say what they're talking about is wrong. I mean, that is a thing now. You know what I mean? That there are creators
I know
who that's what they do. They just look at other influencers and say, "No, this is completely wrong. I can't believe this person's putting this stuff out here."
right.
You know, or they're talking about compound interest. Okay, it's like, okay, great buzzword. Everyone loves it. You know, whatever, the wonder of the world, right? You know, Einstein said it. No, he didn't say it. You know, all this other stuff where you hear about all these things and people are talking about compounding, but yet you're doing it inside a product that actually kind of hurts your compounding effect, but they're pushing that product, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's like mayhem in the streets when it comes to personal finance. But that's why getting someone who can really guide you and be your Sherpa, so to speak, who has wisdom of the mountain, you know, in different conditions, can be so important.
Oh, I'm using that next pitch. I'm just gonna tell clients I'm their Sherpa. Yeah, that's great.
I'm your personal Sherpa. No, I mean, it's just kind of summarize everything. It sounds like there's, the best time to get an advisor is now, whatever your situation is, and the right advisor who is a fiduciary looking out for your best interest, understands the full 360 degree, that's how I've been saying it, is like, estate, tax, how it all works together, your investment approach, everything together is benefiting your specific goals in that specific time of your life. Am I right?
100%. I mean, that at least that's how I view it,
And then, they can take that, and it's amazing how at every stage of your life, there's different times where, your goals are going to be completely different. But working with that advisor to have someone to say, like, look out for, your best interest and show, hey, these are gaps in your plan, or these are missed opportunities, or this is where we should be looking at. How often should an advisor be meeting, or how often should you be meeting with your advisor? Like, what is that expectation there? Is that a monthly meeting? Is that an annual review? And what is typical, and what should people be looking for in their advisors?
I mean, it's anytime you have a question, you should be able to reach out to your advisor.
Pick up the phone and call.
Something comes up, you should be able to reach out and go over what that is. Don't let it linger. To review, if you're talking about how often should I review my overall financial plan?
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of a common thing that people think about. I mean, it's good to do it probably every year, right? To do a check-in, to do a look at least once a year. You can do it quarterly.
Do you guys get frustrated if people call you too often?
No.
And like what's off limits? So would you encourage, if someone gets a new job, can they call you for?
I want them to call me. I want them to call me to figure that stuff out. When they don't, that's when problems start. I would rather fix the issue before it starts. I don't want it to spread to a forest fire. You know what I mean? And I want to be able to, I want to guide them. I
asked that because I think a lot of people have financial advisors, but there's two things. Either they're not hearing from them often, or they hear from them when there's like only a downturn in the market, or they're afraid to ask them because they feel like they're bothering that advisor. And so, hearing from both of you, like, hey, no, just, do you want clients calling you all the time? That's real.
I know, like Eric, I feel like Eric generally enjoys. I mean, I do too. But hearing from clients, right? So
yep. Yeah. Plus, those, I mean, from a business side too, those are the ones that you build the tight relationship with, and those are the ones that end up being sources of referrals too. But it's also fun. That's a fun part of the business.
Yeah, the relationship.
I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
So if someone listening right now, they're on the fence, or like, maybe I should get one, what's the next step for their search journey? Like, obviously, I would imagine, do they have to be, what would you suggest? Like, next 2 steps, action items they can take away right now?
I would say, make a list of maybe 3 or 4 things that are what you really want to focus on.
Yeah.
And prioritize, you know what I mean? That's going to be the priority. And then I would, based off of that, look at kind of what type of advisor you want to be speaking with, a list of maybe people that who have done who have done well for themselves financially, and ask them, hey, who do you work with? Do you work with someone? And if you do, would you perhaps give me an introduction? I think that's important. So, look at that there. And by making, you know what I mean? By making that list, you're already doing probably more than 80% of the people out there. These are the things. And that's also going to help the financial advisor because they're going to know what's important to you and the things that they should be looking at in order to develop for whatever if it's a full scope financial plan or if it's, a small financial plan that they're, what do they need to focus on for you? And they can give you clear directives on what needs to get done in order for you to accomplish your goals, so.
Okay. Eric, any last words?
Nah,
So
man, a few words.
All right. Well, I think this is great. I think, overall, if you're listening, there's a lot to consider. You want to make sure they're fiduciary. You want to make sure you're looking at all their interests, and their goals are aligned with yours, and start to, ask questions and get people in your corner and build the right team around you. And there's no better time than now for doing that. That wraps up the show of Wealth Wisdom. On the next show, we dive into real estate versus equities, which is better. So we'll see you there.
The never ending debate.